Welcome to the Pick Six podcast show on CBS Sports HQ, presented by the United States Marine Corps. Will Brinson, joined by Ryan Wilson and John Breach, here in lovely Los Angeles, Marina Del Rey, the top of this beautiful hotel where we have gorgeous scenic views. The Super Bowl just 48 hours away. It's crazy how fast the week has gone. And the Super Bowl will kick off, boys, with the coin toss, as is tradition in the NFL. Ryan, do you think, would you call heads or tails if you were on the field working as a player wanting to win the coin toss?
Breach, what's the old saying? Tails never fails?
I don't use that saying. I don't believe in it.
I know, because I think you're going to pick the wrong one. I'm going with tails. It seems pretty straightforward. When in doubt, take tails. It's 50-50, but in the case of the coin toss, Breach, it's not.
Yeah, you know what? My saying as a kid was heads or you're deads. And I don't want to be dead, so I'm taking heads.
My gosh.
So, yeah, that took a quick turn.
I'm a big tails never fails guy. Also, tails!
Brinson's bringing props to the
Sonic the Hedgehog fame. Shout out to my son Robbie for putting tails in my bag on the way out here. Of course, I will go tails with the coin toss. We had the Hall of Fame inductions take place on Thursday night. A different night. Very excited for our friend, a friend of a friend, Tony Baselli. He got in headlining a class that some would say is probably a bit of a weaker class. But we got some guys in this Super Bowl who are playing in the Super Bowl who are potentially future Hall of Famers, including Matthew Stafford. Now, I have said for a year, Ryan Wilson, that Matthew Stafford will get in the Hall of Fame. Do you agree with me that a Super Bowl victory will secure Matthew Stafford's spot in Canton?
No, of course not. I don't. And the interesting thing is, Breach, and I'm interested in what you say, Bryant McFadden, our colleague, agrees with Brinson, and Pete Prisco does not agree with Brinson, and I'll tell you why. Before this season, Matthew Stafford had exactly 0 playoff wins, as many as me and you combined. He's gone 3-0 through the stretch, and he's been great. Only 1 interception, 17 interceptions throughout this season. But when you look at similarity scores from our friends at Pro Football Reference, here are the names at this point through Matthew Stafford's career that compare closely with him.
You've been doing research on this to try and take me down.
He wants to shut Brinson down for good.
So these are really, really good quarterbacks. I'm not sure if they're going to get in the Hall of Fame. And it starts with our colleague, Tony Romo, who we love at his current job, and he was fantastic with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's a fair comparison. I don't think we've been clamoring for Tony Romo to get in.
I think that's actually a really good comparison.
I love it. Mark Brunell, Pete Prisco's buddy, is also similar at this point through his career, through 11 seasons. Steve McNair. Now, I'll give you some names of guys who are in. Jim Kelly, Joe Namath, from a different era. So I think it's going to be incredibly difficult. Oh, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this name. Someone named, let me check, Andy Dalton is also on the list. So that puts the final nail in the Matthew Stafford coffin. Breach, what do you think of that?
Well, you know what? I liked your argument, Wilson, but unfortunately, I think I actually agree with Brinson here.
Also, Breach, let's point out. Go ahead. Sorry, you go ahead.
I'm going to say real quick that if the Rams win the Super Bowl and Matthew Stafford, they don't do it in spite of Matthew Stafford. If they win 20-17, throws 3 interceptions, that doesn't help his case. But if they win because of him, because he throws for 300 yards and throws 3 touchdown passes, I think that is enough to get him in based on his resume so far. Because some of the names you read, Tony Romo, Mark Brunell, Andy Dalton, you know what none of those guys had? A Super Bowl ring.
Exactly.
And so once you put that ring on Matthew Stafford's finger, I think that's enough to get him to Canton, assuming he doesn't retire after this year. He plays 2 or 3 more good years, and I think he's in.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about the list that you read, Wilson, is that I actually think it makes my argument even stronger. Because
of course.
if you give Tony Romo a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys, he's in the Hall of Fame.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
If Jim Kelly wins 1 or 2 or how many of those Super Bowls that he goes to 4 straight, if he wins even one of those, he's in a much different discussion as like maybe one of the great quarterbacks of all time versus, a guy who got to 4 straight Super Bowls but couldn't close the deal.
Still a Hall of Famer, but right.
Yeah, I mean, if Andy Dalton wins 1 playoff game, we would
he'd still
Well, talk about the Bengals. Ken Anderson, if they win that Super Bowl, he's probably in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's sort of the case I'm making here is that if Stafford wins this Super Bowl, then he's going to have, by the time he retires, the sort of numbers, the sort of production, the work that he does in L.A. versus what he did in Detroit. I think people are going to start to separate the Matthew Stafford from Detroit away from the Matthew Stafford in Los Angeles and come to realize that it was in fact the Detroit Lions franchise that caused Matthew Stafford not to succeed, not the other way around. So in my opinion, a Super Bowl this year continued production for 3 or 4 more years with the Rams, Matthew Stafford would be a Hall of Famer.
We need to have a camera on you in the fourth quarter if Stafford's thrown for like 350 yards.
All right. That'll do it for this segment on the Pick Six Podcast, presented by the United States Marine Corps on CBS Sports HQ. Coming up after the break, much more Super Bowl talk. Next.